We're here for another episode of EV Obsession. I'm Zach Shahan, CEO of Clean Technica, and my co-host for EV Obsession,
Joe Borras. What's up, babies?
We survived Halloween, and
that's right.
We hope you liked our special Halloween show yesterday. We enjoyed it. But let's jump into, we have a lot of news today. We thought, oh, we don't have much. Then we're like, oh no, there's a ton to talk about today.
This happens every day. The world of EVs is constantly changing, constantly evolving. It's super exciting. I'm so glad to be a part of it. Let's go.
So the first story here is Volkswagen EV batteries retaining 93% capacity after 62,000 miles. EV batteries are lasting longer, holding up better than had been expected, according to a test from German-based ADAC, we'll call it. Allgemeiner Deutscher Automobilclub. And you know we can trust the Germans. Very trustworthy with clean diesel, with automotive, build quality. No, definitely they're known for being an auto giant, and they have made mistakes in the past. But in general, I think a German-based automobile organization testing EV battery capacity and degradation is a pretty trustworthy source. So I'll let you talk about the details more, or your takeaway. But my main takeaway is just that I've been expecting this for a while. There's all this concern and hype about battery degradation. Everyone asks, well, how long, when do you have to replace the battery? After like 3 years? How much does it cost? And, the response is like, it's going to last as long as the car lasts. In my head, I'm not going to waste money replacing a battery after a handful of years. The battery is probably never going to be replaced in an EV before the car is done. And if it is, by the time it needs to be replaced, batteries are going to be so much cheaper that it's really not the thing. It's not the biggest concern. So I'm just happy another test is showing, hey, lay off the worry, lay off the stress. EV batteries are doing fine. Joe?
Yeah, back when the original iPhone came out in December of 2007 or September of 2007, whatever it was, there were a ton of articles. There were so many people saying, I would never buy a phone without knowing how much it would cost to replace the battery. And there were so many people, so many rumors and articles talking about it would be hundreds of dollars to replace the battery, this and that, and how these kind of battery replacement costs were going to slow iPhone and smartphone adoption. And at the end of the day, none of that happened. The batteries last just as long as you need them to. That's exactly what's going to happen here with cars. There are plenty of vehicles out there on the road. 25-year-old Toyota Prius is still running around on the OE batteries at reduced capacity, but still completely practical for everyday use, giving their owners years and years of remaining reliable driving. This is the same kind of thing. It's good to see the testing. It's good to see the numbers, but at the end of the day, I really don't think this is something that is a legitimate concern. I think a lot of the people who are concerned about this kind of battery cost, this is a fake concern. They're not going into car dealers asking people for, how much the transmission costs to replace. They're not saying how much is a new engine for one of these in case I want to keep it more than 100,000 miles.
Yes.
This is a non-issue. This is just hysteria and fear mongering. And as much as I do like this, and I think this is a very strong result, it is a result that's only going to get better with time. And the type of people who need to see this kind of data can't understand it anyway. So let's move on.
Sounds good. And just good to see that it is a Volkswagen brand. I love that you, so it's I don't think we've really seen that specifically for those vehicles yet. And they're sort of one of the newer, more mass market vehicles. But I love the comparison you made with the mobile phones too. So, there's so many battery factories and battery factory announcements this past year that sometimes, I see one, I'm like, wait, did we cover that already? In this case, we definitely could not have, because this is a brand new $8 billion investment from Toyota, just announced yesterday. Halloween, auspicious day for such a big announcement. But yeah, it's in North Carolina, 3,000 new jobs expected. Just enormous investment in the EV future. All the hype Toyota gave for years about hydrogen and solid state batteries that we're going to make these lithium ion batteries not relevant. It was all puff and smoke and whatever. And So this brings Toyota's total investment to almost $14 billion, creating 5,000 jobs at the Toyota battery manufacturing North Carolina facility there. So it's as part of its global electrification push. Pretty wild.
It is. Now, keep in mind, there's a couple of things happening here at the same time. This is $14 billion in this location. This is not 14 billion globally. This is 14 billion in this location. And the other critical thing to note here is this is not a solid, or at least I don't believe it's a solid state battery plant. It's not meant for that. So we talked about this a couple of days ago, how Toyota has,
if it was, they would have told us.
They would have told us, right?
Yeah.
Toyota has been pushing this narrative of just wait another year, wait another 2 years. The solid state batteries are coming, and they're doing a little bit of an Osborne to themselves. I'm going to talk in one of the articles coming up in the next few days about how Ford did the same thing to themselves, but they have kind of gotten everybody else who has been EV curious to say, well, maybe I'll wait for the next one, by pushing out this idea, this narrative of a solid state battery that's, right around the corner. In the meantime, they are ramping up production of their own BEVs and plug-in hybrids. We, talked about the BZ4X and the Prius Prime last week as well, that I had as review cars. Those are great cars. And Toyota is really coming to the table the same way they always have, whether it was the pickup game with the Tundra, the T100 in the 90s, the full-size Avalon in the late 80s. Toyota is always late to the party. They see what everybody else is doing. They learn from everybody else's mistakes, and then they come to market with an absolutely bulletproof product, and they're doing the exact same thing here. As soon as Toyota is ready, they're going to unleash a floodgate of new EVs, and they are going to be market leaders in terms of reliability, dependability, and everything else. That's the Toyota way. There is actually a book called The Toyota Way. And if you have not read it and you are commenting about Toyota's plans for the future, you are in dangerous territory. Betting against Toyota is a bad idea.
Joe's ready to roast you, and that includes me.
Now, it's a legitimately good read. Go
ahead.
No, I was going to say there was an attempt. So General Motors came to Toyota in the 80s, and they basically asked Toyota, how do you build these cars with so few reliability issues, right? Where are the cars at your factory that what do you do with the cars that don't pass inspection? For those of you that don't understand manufacturing, when a car comes off a GM or a Ford or a Jeep assembly line, it gets inspected. And if it fails inspection for whatever reason, it gets pulled off to the side. Those vehicles that are pulled off to the side then get pulled out by technicians. Whatever is wrong with them gets repaired, and then they go out to the customer. That's not how it works at Toyota. It's not how it works at Honda, but especially Toyota. Toyota are like mental patients about this. They have like serious OCD issues. When a car comes off the assembly line and it is not ready to go to a consumer, they don't put it aside. They stop assembly. They completely stop assembly. They figure out what went wrong. They make changes to the assembly line to ensure that it'll never happen again. And then they take that car away and basically scrap it or use it for crash testing or any other research. And it never goes to a consumer. And when they told GM that, GM said, we want to learn how to do this. This makes sense. So they opened a factory together in Southern California. They called it the NUMMI factory, NUMMI. All this is in Google or Bing or your favorite search thing. So go find it. You'll see what I'm talking about. Within 2 or 3 years of trying to do things the Toyota way, GM's people were so frustrated and were so up to their eyeballs, and their egos were so hurt, and they were so butthurt about being told how many different ways they were doing it wrong, that they said, you know what, forget it, Toyota, you can have this factory, we're done. And they went home and went back to doing things the GM way. They learned some things. The cars have been significantly better. The processes have been significantly better since the NUMMI experiment. But that was where GM finally realized that, you know what, it's not worth it to try to build cars as obsessively as Toyota does. And this has always been their process. So again, Toyota may be late to the party, but Toyota, as far as they are concerned, they are arriving on their own schedule. So yeah, very exciting about this. But one last thing I want to say before we move on. Isn't it interesting that while you are reading all of these articles, all of these propaganda articles that are funded by oil companies and funded by the big three who are going to have to start building, continue building internal combustion SUVs and pickup trucks to fund their, to pad their pocketbooks while they now meet the demands of the UAW. And they're now saying that EVs are not quite ready yet, and there's not the demand for EVs that we expected. Isn't it interesting that as you're reading all those articles, Toyota is doubling down its investment on EVs? Everybody else is going to hit the brakes. Toyota is going to hit the gas. And when the dust settles, Toyota is going to be way ahead of everybody, including Tesla.
Toyota's going to hit the accelerator. We have to use different language now. No longer hitting the gas.
That's right. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. We'll put that in the blooper reel.
This is natural. Even the biggest EV fanatics say this phrase still.
It's still the gas.
It's still in our like
it's electric.
Our brain autopilot, whatever.
Gas. Yeah, it's electric gas.
I just want to make one more comment and then actually ask you one more question on this story before we move on. It is a big one. So I just highlighted here that production will be increased in a phased approach, with line launches planned through 2030 to reach a total production of more than 30 gigawatt hours annually. So it's 30 gigawatt hours. This is the original Tesla Gigafactory was supposed to be 35 gigawatt hours, and then it was like doubled and all that. So it's not like totally enormous, but it is a legit, gigafactory by Tesla standards. But the thing I was highlighting here actually is that this is planned launches through 2030. You as Toyota especially don't make planned launches through 2030 if you don't see this as the future. And if you don't see this specific, technology and what they're planning to do here, their long-term rollout plan as the future. So they're very clearly sort of going against their own marketing in some ways with this kind of defying their own skepticism and cynicism and like delay tactics. So I think it's still 2030. It's not the fastest transition, and that's one thing I want to get to asking you was, so there's been a lot of articles on Clean Technica and elsewhere about Toyota being too slow, too late, that they're circling the drain, that they're going to die, that they're going to collapse on their own weight because they're too big and slow to react, and they're waiting too long. And I think, as you already just said, you sort of see them as timing things perfectly often. So I want to get a sense from you what you think. Do you think they will be hurt as a company for waiting longer than others? Do you think they are timing it perfectly to succeed, to capitalize on the transition, paying attention to mistakes they and others made in a small degree before going big? What do you think on these kind of criticisms of Toyota? And
Sure, I have been very vocal in our own comment system. Maybe I shouldn't be. Well, it's a totally different conversation. No. I have gone into a number of these articles that we've published, and I've put my own comments in there saying, you guys are out of your minds betting against Toyota. Toyota are so smart. And when you read about something like Toyota is putting 10% of its R&D budget into developing EVs, if you are new to the automotive world or don't quite understand the scale of the economies involved, that might sound like they're not taking it serious. But 10% of Toyota's R&D budget is like the GDP of small countries. That's a ton of R&D, energy, and investment happening there. So I don't think Toyota's lying down or not taking this seriously at all. I think that is a false narrative. I don't like that we have a number of writers that have fallen for that, but it is what it is. We are certainly not alone. There's a huge majority of EV writers and environmental writers who, unless a company comes out and says we are 100% BEV, they have a problem with that. And I understand why. We need to stop burning fossil fuels 25 years ago. There is an absolute necessity for continued life on this planet to stop burning fossil fuels. If you're listening to this and you don't agree with that, I can't help you. You're an idiot.
Yeah, but there's two separate matters. So one is they've had just publicly harmful campaigns going for a long time about hydrogen, about self-charging EVs, that kind of stuff. But that's separate from what I was sort of getting at, which was, is the company itself going to be hurt by by the timing of its approach, and you have a strong opinion it is not. So
It
let's
is
move
not.
on.
Wait. One last thing I want to say
Okay.
though. We're talking about that capacity at that location. We're talking about, well, it's a true gig, it's a gigawatt, but it's not as big as Tesla's factory. When they launched the gigawatt factory, that was pretty much their only factory, their only battery factory, right? Toyota has battery plants in Japan. They have them coming online in China, in Europe. This is just one facility in North Carolina, and they have more investment lined up for West Virginia and Canada. So we're only talking about one $8 billion investment at one plant in North Carolina that they have stages out to 2030. They have the same thing going at 6 other facilities. They are taking this at least as seriously as Tesla. They are serious about battery manufacturing. And I think the thing that we should be talking about as people who are versed in this industry, as people who have seen a lot and who have been writing about solid state batteries for 15 years, since before people even knew what solid state even meant, the thing that we should point out here is this is not meant to be a solid state production facility. However, they think that by 2030, they will still be building viable batteries here. So what that tells me is that maybe we don't need to expect mainstream adoption of, solid state batteries before 2030.
Yeah. So moving on, this, if you look at the top of this press release from VinFast, it says June 8th, 2023. This is not the news. The news, this is about the VinFast VF3, a mini electric car for the mass market. So we have a writer who's working on a story that VinFast may bring this to the US market. I'm not sure what his we have to see the story when he writes it up more to get a better sense of what he's getting at, what his sources are. But it intrigued me for a few reasons. One is, okay, the late night show with Jimmy Kimmel's late night comedy show.
Sure.
They've been, it's a very popular show. I love the show, hilarious, and they've had VinFast doing sponsored stuff lately. They do these little fake commercials with Guillermo. So they did one of those. They did one where they picked up Olivia Rodrigo on the way to school as a hitchhiker in a VinFast. And at the time I was like, oh, Jimmy Kimmel got a VinFast? And then I saw they've got sponsorships going on with VinFast. So I'm like, oh, they're driving the VinFast on the show as part of their sponsorship campaign. So it's, to me, I mean, why would VinFast do that if it's not planning to sell EVs in the US? I mean, potentially it's just a stock thing, but I don't think so. I think they're planning to enter the market. We've talked about VinFast in the past that it's a legitimately government-backed automotive company, and it's not like any other EV startups we've seen. Like it is so government-backed. It will be fine if the government decides it will be fine. And I don't know about the small VF3, but they've got a lot of models. But for sure, I feel like they do have a plan to try to be the next Honda or Toyota or Hyundai or Kia. We've seen it, we've seen Toyota and Honda do it, come to the US, become major leading automobile manufacturers. Hyundai and Kia did it from Korea, and now I think Vietnam's like, hey, it's our turn. Japan did it, Korea did it. It's time for Vietnam to get into the US market, and VinFast is going to make it happen, and we're going to go on Jimmy Kimmel. So I think it's exciting. if they did bring the small one, that we can talk about it more, but I think the avenue for that is that there's not much on the market like that. There's not many cheap little cars on the market anymore. Everybody keeps pulling them for high margin, big SUVs and trucks.
You can say ass, it's in the Bible.
There's a big opening for that. And I would love to see VinFast try to, open up that market. And I mean, just Clean Technica readers and writers, like there's a lot, they're always asking for that. So I think it would be fascinating to see what would happen if VinFast did that.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind, VinFast has begun selling vehicles in the US market. They're now currently selling cars in California only. They've sold as of the end of October, 2,000 vehicles in the US that are on the road. So they are in the US market tentatively. They are not going anywhere. I think that's the most important thing. It might be 2,000 this year. It might be 3,000 next year. Might be 5,000 the year after that. but they are not going to stop until they reach their goal of 50,000 annual units. I think that that's crucially important to understand, that this is a massive, massive, multi-billion dollar conglomerate. This is not some kind of, nothing startup. The pictures that you're showing here are the original CGI concept illustrations, but this is a vehicle that has been produced. There are, this is an in production vehicle. So to bring this to the US would be very interesting. This would occupy that part of the market that used to be occupied by the smart car, or like the Geo Metro, or, a little more recently than that, the Scion IQ or the Toyota Yaris. This is a tiny little compact SUV style vehicle, and if it's halfway decently built and halfway decently safe, maybe it's got a 4-star safety rating or something, I think you'd sell a lot of these, especially, and I don't know if we're going to get to this or not today, but especially considering the current automotive financing climate.
Oh yeah, that's our next item. But
that's a segue, baby.
Yeah, that's why I would just add that I think that if in fact, I mean, this is just total guesswork, but if I was in VinFast shoes and I wanted to sell this car all over the world to developing markets that are less served, I would love to see it in the US, have it in the US, and be able to say, look, people in the US, Americans are buying it. It's good enough for Americans. It's good enough for you in Colombia, and Zimbabwe and wherever. So I think I think VinFast has a huge potential market sitting out there waiting for it, and this would just be some of the best advertising for that would be, selling in the US.
I agree.
All right, here it is. Take it away, Joe. This is a continuation of the last 2 videos we've done.
Yeah, this is brutal. So we've been talking about this kind of ongoing story that I feel is being underreported. And I think that we are facing a really serious credit crunch, credit crisis in the automotive marketplace that's going to affect not only EV sales, but the entire market as a whole. We talked a couple of weeks ago about the rate of default. We talked about the high payments among dealerships. And another thing that we've been talking about has been the number of banks that are pulling out of the automotive financing sector. This is kind of a big deal, especially when you look at the fact that, like, people trying to give back their car or searching for terms, give back car, is higher than it's ever been in terms of Google history. When you look at the fact that auto loans that are more than 60 days delinquent are, a greater percentage of the auto market than they've ever been. Well, now we've got a major bank, Capital One. They laid off a number of employees on a Calm Monday related to all aspects of dealer relations. That's going to be salespeople. That's going to be account managers. That's going to be all of that. And they are completely closing their California processing center due to cost and diverting to Texas. Now, this is coming from the car dealership guy. Car dealership guy is a kind of memey analyst in the automotive world, but he's got 50,000 followers. Almost every single one of them is a car dealership. He is incredibly credible. Incredibly credible. Yeah, that sounds right. That tracks. He's a really credible guy. And, these rumors that he puts out there are not put out lightly. He understands that saying this kind of stuff can move markets, right? Especially when you have the kind of audience that he does.
Yeah.
So when he's saying that
on that topic, I would just emphasize as well that he's very active on Twitter as well, followed by a ton on Twitter, X, whatever. And he's had conversations, public conversations with Elon, where Elon Musk has responded to some of the stuff that he was highlighting and pulling out there about these kind of financing and leasing and interest rate issues. So he is very, like, inside baseball, very detailed. That's why I think people really follow him, because there's just all these levels, all these depths of what he's talking about that we don't normally see. And he's like, he manages dealerships and he's sort of bringing them to light more through this. So it's a great public education, like, kind of account. But it's very, it's not Wikipedia. It's not, it's like he's got eggs in the basket, and he's trying to influence the market as well. I mean, he's trying to influence people and sort of, bring attention to issues that he thinks should be getting more attention, right?
I think that's fair. I think the main thing is, and to me, what sets him apart is that he really genuinely does seem to want to help people. If you read Automotive News, which is, it's considered like the go-to auto dealer and auto industry insider news source, it is loaded with propaganda and PR masquerading as real news. It always has been, but I think it's taken a while for people to realize that that is what it has been. And a lot, because its primary customer base is automotive dealerships, and its primary advertisers are auto dealers and distributors, they don't like publishing things that upset the dealers, because dealers get mad. They don't, if you publish bad news to most car dealers, they just stop reading the news. They don't like realize that the bad news still keeps coming, even though they don't read it. Right. They just like kind of like la, 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 la. And that's it. They move on. And, God, I hope they play this at the NADA conference when I'm on stage. That's going to go bad for me. However, I really get the impression that the car dealership guy is trying to give an objective, real world view of the industry, of the market, to the dealers to help them understand, to help them grow and help them succeed. And the people that follow him, they're going to do better than the people that don't. And I really want to put an emphasis on something that he's got here in this comment. He says, on a positive note, they, Capital One, also announced that they have 55 stores testing higher loan and payment amounts up to $1,400 a month from the previous maximum of $1,000, anticipating a continued rise in the average monthly payment. $1,400 a month? Are you crazed? Are you like actually a mental patient? Look, man, I don't know your situation. If you're listening to this, I don't know you. I don't know what your deal is, but you absolutely do not need a $1,400 a month car payment unless it is such a small percentage of your overall net worth that your money is doing better than $1,400 a month in the market. And you just don't want to take it out of the market for that reason. That I totally understand. But you're putting down $1,000 a month to drive a lifted 4-wheel drive Silverado back and forth to work because you're a lineman or electrician or a welder somewhere. Dude, your priorities are not right.
Well, there's a couple things on that I wanted to pontificate on. So,
so I love how when you end your rants, you ask me what I think, and when I end my rants, I'm like, we can move on.
Well, I only do that when I have a specific, a specific question that I'm curious what your take is on it. Because we come from different backgrounds on stuff, and we have often different takes. We line on a lot, but then we also have different areas of expertise and different takes. And sometimes I'm very curious, what is Joe's take on this? Or I know you've talked about something a lot, or I know you've chimed in on something or given hints of something, and I'm like, what's Joe actually fully think about this? I want to make sure I'm getting his full picture, not just like a comment here or there that means probably a lot more to him than it comes across to the listener. If it's like short and like there's a lot more behind it than just one or two statements. But yeah, so on this one, when you sent it over, first thing was like, oh crap, it's all falling down, it's crashing. The topic of the last 2 days, it's arriving sooner than even we thought maybe. But the end part I find interesting because one, it sort of basically signifies an improving economy, possibly. Like, it's possible that people are making more money now. There's less inflation, less concern of inflation. People are willing to spend more and more on cars. So the payments are going up. Now, as you said, $1,400 a month is a maximum, but the previous max was 1,000. So that could be because the economy is improving and there's more people who are like, okay, I can afford $1,400 a month. Of course, Joe, it's not me, it's not you. So let's not kid ourselves and think this is normal, but that's the max.
Yeah.
The other thought is, oh, they've crunched the numbers. They're having a real problem from people not making payments. And one, they are upping the rates, the monthly payment amounts, so that they don't have this situation anymore where it's like, oh, I can afford that much. No, it's like either you can afford this or you can't. And we're going to see in the first few months if you can afford it before we get too far down the line. Like Like we're not gonna, like you're gonna have to show that you can spend this much money a month on at the time of, you know, financing, whatever. So I think that's part of it. And then also, where was it going? Oh, yeah. I mean, I think they're sort of in a situation of potentially they need to make money. If people aren't making payments, they're like, well, we need to make sure we're getting money in the door. We need to raise our monthly, you know, whatever, charges, whatever. But then the last question, which it's not answered here, is, does this also mean that they're moving away from 6-year loans and like 7-year loans back to shorter loans? Because I think this is part of the problem. Someone says, oh, I can afford that, and maybe they can for 3 or 4 years, and then maybe, you know, statistics tell us some portion of people are going to have life go downhill, and some portion will have their life go uphill. And if you're in a 7-year contract and your life goes downhill, all of a sudden you have a problem at like year 4 or 5 or whatever. You know, you start having more healthcare costs, or some kind of job problem, or some other issues in the family. All of a sudden, maybe you were fine for 4 years, but all of a sudden you can't cover the car payment in year 5. So I think there's a question like, are they raising the monthly amounts and sort of trying to move away from these really long financing options? I don't know. You don't think so? I think
no, not even a little bit. So I appreciate the wholesome, optimistic, positive nature of your comments. I think in reality, we have to consider two different things. Number one, we are staring down the barrel of what is still record inflation. Don't look at the government's numbers. When you look at government inflation numbers, the kind that they like to put out right before elections, what you see is an adjusted rate of inflation that does not include housing, does not include energy, does not include food, and does not include the price of used cars. When you do include those 4 things, we are still facing record amounts of inflation, the likes of which nobody has seen since the 1970s. And the reality is, a jump from 1,000 to 1,400, even though it's a 40% jump, isn't that crazy when the cost of goods continuously goes up 5 to 10% every quarter. Not every year, every quarter. That means that $1,000 that you have in your pocket today is only going to be worth about $1,400 within the next 5 years. And they're trying to find out if they're going to be able to continue and keep pace with these rapid increase in prices and interest rates. That's part one. Part two, fractional reserve banking. Guys, go look at Investopedia, look at Wikipedia, look up fractional reserve banking. That's the system that we use in the United States. When a bank looks at its assets, a bank is different from you and me. A bank's assets are its loans. That means that they've loaned you $100,000. You're going to pay them back $120,000. So they have that $120,000 as an asset on the books that they can turn around and sell, bundle with other loans, and refinance. All kinds of stuff that happens in financial money markets, or financial and money markets, right? So this is all kind of, it's out there. This is stuff you can go read about. The banks don't have this money to lend. In other words, if a bank lends you $100,000, it only has to have about 10 to 15,000 of that amount in its reserves. So what this test is doing is it is allowing them to see, is it safe to offer these larger loans so then we can write these higher assets on our books and then bundle them, package them, and sell them, and try to get our money back faster by making them seem more attractive. The theory being that people buying more expensive vehicles are less likely to default on them than people buying Nissan Sentras or, Chevy Sonics or something. I think that kind of conventional wisdom really made a ton of sense 5 years ago. I think there's going to be a lot of financial instruments out there that are based on that old system, that old time wisdom, that old time religion of the stock market. But I don't think that's going to be the case 5 years from now, especially as people continue to do things like the Tesla reach or stop buying sedans that are affordable and practical and make that reach and leap up to lease a more expensive vehicle at a lower price. They're using that leasing tool to get into a nicer vehicle instead of using that leasing tool to give themselves flexibility in the vehicle they were going to buy anyway. I think there's a lot that's happening here, and none of it is good.
Yeah, I feel like I skipped over, I guess maybe you covered it early on, but skipped over sort of the big takeaway, which is there's a problem. There's a problem that's
so bad, you guys.
To big layoffs, Capital One trying to figure out how it should change its price, its pricing and its loan arrangements and all that. And it just, I mean, when on top of this stuff we talked about in yesterday's video and the previous video, which I really encourage you to watch if you haven't, then it just, I mean, it just has a real feeling of the whole thing might collapse, like
that's right.
It makes me think I should just put the cash under the mattress and get out of the,
but that's wrong.
Get out of the market, because what's going to happen in the next year? And I'm concerned that there were all these concerns about recession and this and that from inflation, all that stuff, and all these things. But I think it's something like this that really is what it's a whole auto financing crisis. It's really what could be the avalanche that we figured would come from somewhere. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we're being paranoid. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just, market adjustments, and it's going to be fine in the end. But it seems like it seems concerning to me.
When they make The Big Short 2, they're going to be talking about these two idiot bloggers who were talking about this for a year before it happened, and that's going to be us. And look,
and car dealership guy.
That's true. That's true. This is real talk, though. And this is something that's absolutely important for everyone to understand. If you're out there and you've got money in the market and everything else, I would not, and again, this is not financial advice. Go talk to your financial planner, get a fiduciary involved, see what you can do on that side. But this is just my personal take. If inflation is rising, if the cost of goods is rising more quickly than the interest or the money that you're making on your investments is going up, the best thing you can do is buy assets. The best thing you can do is go buy yourself a dependable car. Go buy yourself, more food and clothes and TVs and sofas, stuff that you're going to have to buy. Like if your refrigerator dies 3 years from now and the market's in the pooper, you're still going to need to go get a refrigerator. If you have the cash, do it now before your rickety old fridge goes, because you may not have the money in 2 or 3 years. So
whenever
I know that's a depressing statement, but here we are.
Whenever I'm grocery shopping, we're gonna get the deal stuff, the sales, the BOGOs, the big sale item. I'm like, well, I should just buy as much as I possibly can.
That's right.
It's never going to be cheaper.
It's never going to be cheaper. No, but listen,
eat this again, and it's not going to be cheaper in a year. So just buy it.
In the Great Depression, there were food shortages. There was an inability for grocery stores to get stuff. And by and large, most people were kind of sort of okay because they had canned foods. They knew how to preserve things. They had food stores. If you go to most people's homes today, if the power went out and the grocery stores stopped getting food right now, most people have 3 to 4 days of food in their house, maybe 5. And I'm no different. America's cupboards are bare, dude. So
go stock up, get those BOGOs.
Well,
just leave some for me.
If you can, I think that's, putting the cash in the mattress doesn't matter if the cash is worthless.
Yeah. Well, that is
that's uplifting,
in
huh?
Poland and Europe a lot. And, the jarred and canned stuff. But yeah, so.
You feel better or worse now?
I don't know. But
I feel so much worse.
Yeah, we're going to roll through these last ones real quick in the next 5 minutes. Not going to talk as much. Those were the core stories. There's word here that a well-equipped single-motor Chevy Equinox could start for $35,000 in the U.S. someday.
Yeah, that's with the rebate. Yeah,
it's possible. No, this is with, I think this is not including the,
because it says it starts with 48,995.
not including the, I have to scroll down the article more, but further down the article, it said that maybe early 2024, but there's not a clear time frame, obviously, at the moment, as you can tell from the title. But yeah, I mean, they're just, GM's looking to offer more affordable options again. No, I think that's without the tax credit.
All right, cool.
That's the hope. We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens.
Any commentary on that?
No, I think GM knows what it's doing. They can make an inexpensive EV.
I sort of just feel like
this will be solid.
We'll have more to talk about when something actually happens, but for now,
exactly,
it's hopeful.
It's hopeful. It's positive.
This is not so hopeful. Volkswagen software division Cariad continues to struggle. Job cuts. I'm honestly a little surprised it's still alive. Like Volkswagen, it's just been a source of unfortunate news for a while. So supposedly it's one of the key things that might have led to Herbert Diess losing his job as CEO of Volkswagen Group. I don't know, just something to highlight again as something to keep an eye on. It doesn't seem to be getting a lot better. There's job cuts. Volkswagen is not known as a software leader still. So any more commentary on that?
They cannot fire these people soon enough, man. Volkswagen needs to trash all these people. They need to go to Google Auto and say, please save us.
All right. And then you caught a bit of news that the Tesla Cybertruck has been spotted over there on X off-roading, and I'll leave it to you. I haven't really looked at this much. I just see from the title that it's not impressing people with its off-road capabilities.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch the videos are put out by Tesla. There's some loud noises and chunking that are not from the Cybertruck. They're from the Jeep nearby. So like that should be said. But like, honestly, this is a very tame kind of course. I wouldn't even say it's comparable to like what you'd ride in a Jeep Wrangler at your local auto show in. Is it even on? Yeah. So there you go.
So that's that. And the last story, just electric buses continue to sell well in Europe. About 100 here from Solaris, Polish electric bus manufacturer that sells a lot of electric buses. Stockholm, Sicily, buying electric buses. So just continues to be 55 for Stockholm from Solaris. In Italy, they're getting 42 from Solaris as well. So just continue to be electric bus leaders, and finally we're seeing those volumes we wanted to see. So good news.
All right,
that's it. That's our
day.
show. Thank you for tuning in.
We'll be more positive tomorrow.
Hi, my name is Scott Cooney. I started Clean Technica to promote clean energy and other sustainable alternatives, and for 13 years we've been moving markets. If we had a nickel for every time someone told us they bought their first EV, solar, e-bike, or fill in the blank clean energy solution, we'd be a cable TV channel by now. But we don't get those nickels. So unfortunately, we could use your help to reach a few more people. If just 1% of our audience chipped in a few bucks a month, we could hire dozens of great journalists and promote all sorts of climate solutions. It's easy. Just go to cleantechnica.com/support and sign up with a credit card in seconds. Cancel anytime. But we'll be sending out some cool perks too, so I think you'll want to stick around. With your support, we'll keep leading the charge. Thank you so much.